View from the Gutters, episode 44. Welcome to View from the Gutters, the comic book podcast where each episode we discuss a collected edition, trade paperback, or graphic novel, and then recommend and vote on the book for the next episode. Warning: the discussion portion of this show has massive spoilers for that book. On this episode, we discuss Scud, the Disposable Assassin, the whole shebang. And, to skip ahead to the recommendation section, skip to 5816. Welcome to View from the Gutters, episode 44. We just went over this and I already forgot what it was. Sorry. We're in the new recording space. I'm Andrew Chart. We just rented a new recording space. Our neighbors are vacuuming right now, so you might hear that, but...
I thought that was a leaf blower.
I don't know what that is. It sounds like vacuuming, so sorry, but we've got vacuuming neighbors, and
we do.
Yeah.
I mean, we are in a new space, but I am still Joe Pretty.
Yeah.
And as always, I'm Matt McGinnis.
And I'm Tobias Panchin.
And I don't remember my name. I'm Cade Reynolds.
Oh, there we go. All right, what do we... This week, we are talking about Scud,
the Disposable Assassin.
Which you recommended, right,
I did,
Joe?
yes.
Okay, yeah, do you want to start us off with that one?
It was a redemption pick, in fact. You had brought it previously.
It was. I recommended it when Dan... I recommended it in commemoration of Dan Harmon being asked to leave Community, and we didn't vote for it, and he is back running Community again.
Which is hilarious.
Yes. I mean, Donald Glover is leaving like mid-season, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I think Chevy Chase is leaving right away.
Yeah, I'm almost positive he is, so we'll see how that is. But, and I wanted to recommend it again, and it got picked. So, yeah, I think Scud comes from this time when I actually had left comics for a little while and did not know what was going on. And then, remarkably enough, I think it actually finished right after I started reading them again.
Yeah, and it took a long time for the ending to come out.
No, it was a little bit afterwards because we were already friends, and you were talking excitedly about how Scud was going to finish. Because it came out in like 2007, and we met in the fall of 2006. And at that time, you had already started picking comic books up again.
Don't you remember when you guys first
Because
started?
I met Frank through you, and Frank worked at the comic shop at that time. So you had already been to Gabby's, and you had already started reading comics.
Well, I met Gabby a good...
How do you not remember when you and Toby first met?
Gabby is the proprietor of our local...
Yeah, what happened to best friend?
Shops.
Yeah, you guys aren't best friends anymore.
I was very, 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 very high for the entire 6 months when I first met Toby. Constantly, every day. But what I was going to say was that I had borrowed the trades from our friend Jorge, and I had gotten into them, but I never... I think you're thinking of Jorge that was excited about it, because I never finished it because his trades were falling apart because they were old.
It's possible, I guess.
So, but anyways, I mean, Rob Schrab basically went on hiatus for 10 years.
Yeah.
Finished it, and then immediately released the Omnibus. Which is a great collection, the whole shebang, which is an amazing deal for. Except it suffers from, and I'm going to bring this up because Image really needs to fix this. Image's bindings are shit. I have never had an Image trade that trade paperback where the binding did not fail.
And that's a pretty thick book.
Yeah, and my binding on it is failing, which is why I had to read it digitally.
Now, I thought you had actually bought a second copy.
No, I need to.
Okay.
I need to, and I actually...
and Toby brought this up to me recently, which is something I didn't know, but this actually doesn't contain all of Scud.
Well,
it contains all of the main story.
But none of the other storylines were ever finished up, because there's Drywall Unzipped, which this includes, but there's also The Adventures of Drywall and Oswald, which is 2 issues, and there's La Casa Nostroid, which was never finished.
Yeah. And also there's the stories about the other Scuds, right?
There's a mini series, each one by I think a different creator, featuring a different Scud.
Yeah, and strangely enough, the project that Dan Harmon worked the most on was La Casa Nostroid. So I did a little research in time.
Nice.
But Scud is one of my favorite things to read just because it's so unlike anything else. And it starts pretty much right off the bat. It's just the character designs are really, they're cartoony, but they're also... I don't know that you will ever see characters designed the same way that Schrab designs them. Like the character of Jeff is just the most unique looking character.
Come on,
until you get about halfway through.
Actually, he's got arms for legs, so they're really elbow mouths.
On his legs. They are elbow, knee, mouths. He's got.
So does that mean that he has mousetrap feet?
Until you get to
maybe?
Yeah.
And Jeff is really crazy and great and unique until you get about halfway through the book, and Scud is doing a mafia hit and runs into, and I can never remember his name, but it's the character that is basically a person growing up out of an elephant's trunk that has fishing rods for fingers on all of them.
It's part of the Twix gang.
In the town of... after he gets the werewolf arm grafted on.
He fights the dog head guy, Schrodinger's...
Pavlov.
Oh, Pavlov.
There's a man who has a dog for a head.
Yeah.
Not a dog's head, but a dog.
Like an entire dog for a head.
Yeah. And
which is very chair-faced Chippendale.
It really is.
I mean, I think this book actually does owe a lot to the Tick.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities there in the art style and in the just like...
Actually, if I had to put it on a spectrum, it's kind of the exact middle point between the Tick and Johnny the Homicidal Maniac.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
I think the Tick is much more... You have Chairface Chippendale, and you have...
Right. The Tick is on the other... Like, it's on one end of the spectrum, and if you put Johnny on the other side, this falls somewhere in the middle. It's got kind of the wacky weirdness elements of the Tick, but it also has kind of the spastic, crazy, suddenly violent element of Johnny, tempered by the cartoonishness.
It is
weird mix of elements.
Okay, well, stylistically, I will give you the Johnny the Homicidal Maniac thing, but that's the only thing it's got in common.
It's weird that this makes me feel like the Tick is restrained.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that is absolutely that is yes. I agree with that 100% because it is. I mean. He's just like, oh, what if this character had this? Well, we're going to do that now.
It reminds me, not in like stylistic ways, but to kind of James Stoke, where it just is like, how do they think of these creature designs? Like, where do these creature designs come from?
Cocaine is a hell of a drug.
It's just it's bizarre, like how intense some of the designs are, and I don't know, I love them, and I just want more books to push the envelope like this. Actually, just all media to push the envelope like this. You get repetitive villains all the time in every form of media, and it's like this stuff is so fresh and so original.
Actually, I wanted to bounce off of that if I can go into what I thought a little bit.
Yeah, go for it.
I really liked this book the first time I read it, and I liked it a little bit less this time, which is my second time reading it. It's really, really crude, and I don't mean like emotionally, but just like in the way that it was drawn. It's obviously something like it's very 90s indie, like it's just not as polished as the indie stuff that we get today, which is like so much spectacularly more like well polished and well done, and it has really high quality artwork and colors and all of those things that have come from digital media. And so, like, there is a crudeness to it.
It's hand lettered, which is like something you don't see anymore because it's so easy to digitally letter stuff. You can just tell that this grew of an era when like that technology wasn't available.
Absolutely, but like you can see how like the panel lines are a little bit jaggedy, and he even admits in an interview that he does in the last issue that like he cringes when he looks back at the artwork from the early issues because it's really not that great. Like reading the early stuff, it really felt like I was reading a webcomic from like 2002 that maybe not a lot of people were actually going to read.
Well, the thing,
and a lot of its popularity came about from that because in the time that it was being released, like there wasn't a lot of options out there, especially like in the indie area. It was a lot smaller of a market. Mm-hmm. But as I read through it, I came to the conclusion that the fact that it is crude on that level also allows it to be uninhibited in a way that very few things are, and just to have this crazy idea and just go for it, balls to the wall.
Mm-hmm. And that actually, I think, from my perspective, added to the charm of it. Like,
absolutely.
Where I can see you felt that it detracted a little bit, I felt...
I feel like it's a mixed bag. Honestly. I still, on the balance, I still like it.
Yeah, I actually think that added to it a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
And not to just disagree with you.
Oh no, please disagree with me by all means.
But this is my second time reading it too, and I actually enjoyed it more the second time.
Yeah.
Although I think part of that had to do with the fact that the first time that I read it in one sitting. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I loved it. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. But I feel like this book is disjointed, which I think was the purpose. But I didn't like it as much reading it in one sitting that way. And this time I read it, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 15 minutes there. And I felt like it worked a lot better. I really would recommend if you read it to let it breathe a little bit.
Because there's a lot going on. It's something about this that, like Toby was saying, is like it feels a little bit crude. I feel like is in the writing and layout and design too, because there's a lot of stuff in here that editorial would be opposed to.
It feels like somebody who's making it up as they go along.
Exactly.
Like he's just like, he makes the page and it's like, okay, I did that page and now I'm moving on to the next page. Like he's not going back to polish these things and make them really smooth.
And although, like, that can be, like, it can either lend to the charm or detract from it, depending on how you are reading it at the time, like, it does give the book such a distinct feel, though, of just,
I'd almost equate it to, like, going to listen to a band live versus listening to their studio recordings.
Right.
Like, they do different things.
Yes, exactly.
That, they clean up or smooth out in a studio recording that, I mean, you can't do that in a live session.
Right.
It's just, it is what they is. It is what it is, and maybe they're experimenting a little bit, trying something that they're not sure about.
Well, I mean, there's stuff in here that like nobody else would really attempt to do, and maybe for good or for bad. But there's a page in here with 32 panels on it.
Yeah.
Like, what? Who else is going to do that? It's like not enough.
Nobody.
There's not enough detail, it seems, but like it helps the action move so quickly, and the pace of the like combat and action and explosions in this book are awesome, and it's hard to find stuff that does.
Well, and in no time does it feel forced or overplayed. Like, I think there's a lot of shit out there that you can read, and it's very much like, oh, look at how wacky and crazy we're being. We're totally wacky and crazy. And I never feel that reading Scud. Like,
well, it takes itself seriously.
I love how unedited
somehow.
it is, because it definitely feels like you're getting... Like, you're getting more. There's, like, more raw emotion.
I was going to say, I feel almost like reading this book like you're getting a more direct like window right into.
Well, the editors
Rob
would tell
Schrab's.
you to take panels out and cut stuff down, and you just get so much more this way.
About that page with 34 panels, at the end of the last issue, I'm not sure if it's in the trade. There's an interview with Doug Tenapple, or Doug Tenapple is interviewing Rob Schrab, and he says. Rob says, I call that page the Rumbleodian, which I thought was a hilarious portmanteau.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, that interview is not in the trade.
Yeah.
Okay,
Which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that's really interesting to listen to him kind of reminisce about making it, because he was kind of doing it intermittently in the mid-'90s, and then he had that 10-year break.
Yeah.
And so the last 4 issues are as much a reflection of where he's been.
Yeah. Well, and which is kind of what I was bringing up earlier, that like the whole shebang is not the whole shebang, and I wish that the other material was collected in here, specifically like the interviews and other side stories, because I feel like although this is a great trade for the price, it is missing stuff. And,
it is.
And they could make a whole shebang backlog.
Well, and I also I feel like although this is a great paperback, like a really nice hardcover with everything in it would be cool. So, and I know the Image does good work.
I want to say that they did something. I want to say that there was a deluxe edition of this, and I only know that because Kirby wanted to buy it for me, but I think it was out of print.
I don't remember.
But I don't ever remember seeing it. Or
one other interesting point from that interview that I wanted to bring up is that Schrab talks about how when he was originally conceiving the ending back in the 90s, the book was supposed to end where Scud kills Jeff and the world blows up, and that's the end. And coming back to it, he's like, no, that's a bad ending. I have to do something.
That's a shitty ending.
That's a shitty ending. And so I think to a certain extent this book is actually greatly improved by the extra time and space that Schrab had as a creator to really give it the perfect ending, and I think it really does have a good ending.
Well, something that I think is beautiful about comic books is that although it is like a monthly serialized format, the industry is very worried about getting the books out on time, making sure that they come out on the same week of every month, and so you get all 20 pages or whatever every month. What I think is beautiful about comics, though, is once it's collected, you forget about how much time it took for those issues to come out. And so great books that took a really long time to come out, like
Powers.
Powers, or I was going to say
Marvel's Nyx.
Yeah, the Joss Whedon Astonishing X-Men or something like that.
Rising Stars, Planetary. There's a whole list of them.
Yeah, they took forever to come out, and
Kevin Smith's Daredevil.
Sometimes they'll change artists in the middle to make sure that the book stays on its pacing, and I think that does a disservice to a lot of books because in retrospect, I would have rather the original artist just take an extra month and finish it and
you can see this is definitely something that happens in the earlier parts and a lot of the Sandman where there are artist changes because they couldn't get a hold of whoever was penciling the page or inking the page or coloring the page, it does affect. I think it's something you have to look past. I don't necessarily say I don't think it affects the integrity of the stories, but it definitely is something you have to adjust to. Yeah. And I agree. I think when that happens, it can be very jarring.
And as a timeless medium that comics kind of is, because you can go back and read books from other eras, I think that when an artist takes a long time, takes a break, and then comes back and finishes a book years and years later, I think that's not detrimental at all. Like, it sucks to wait that long, but there are some things that are worth waiting for, I think, creatively.
Absolutely.
I don't care how long it takes for every season of Venture Brothers to come out. When the next one comes out, like, regardless of how long it's been, I'm going to watch it because I know that creative team is really interesting. And so I'm glad that instead of just giving up and being like, it's been too long to finish this book, that Rob came back and finished Scud. But I think it has a great ending. I think
I think it's great that we live in the era that we do, where there's such a low barrier to entry in terms of doing creative works.
Yeah,
that there's so much good stuff out there that it's okay for something to take time. It's like if Venture Brothers doesn't come out for 2 years, there's lots of other stuff that I can watch, that I can read, that I can listen to, where it's not like, oh my God, when is this going to come out? I have to have this right now. As a creator, take as much time as you need. Like, there's lots of other things out there that your audience can tide themselves over with. Yes, George Martin takes 5 or 6 years to bring out a book, but you know what? That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, everybody works at their own pace, and like to rush creativity, I think, is usually detrimental. Like, an artist says that their work is never done. It's just, your deadline is up, but it's just good enough, because if you had all the time in the world, you would just sit there and nitpick and continue to focus on stuff. But I do feel like it's a hard balancing act, but it's worth it. It's worth waiting for the book. And so I hate hearing fans be like, I wish you would just finish the book already. When's the book going to be? And it's like, have patience. It's worth waiting for. And in this like instant gratification lifestyle that we live now, like it's hard to remember that sometimes you have to wait for stuff because you can just Google everything and instant information always. But
one of the things that I hate more than anything else is when you see a comment online of somebody being like, blah, 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 why isn't this out yet? Like, don't these people know that they owe us for their fame?
I hate that.
Oh, it just drives me up the fucking wall.
Wait a minute, you mean there's entitlement on the internet?
Yeah.
I don't fucking believe that for a second.
It's just,
I don't believe that for a second.
Yeah, I don't know. There is a real negativity against creators sometimes online.
Well, there's
just you are doing this for me and not for you. And it's like, no, not really. It's the other way around. Like, the creator's doing it because they want to do it. If you're a fan, you're a fan. If not, go fuck yourself. Like, they don't really care. Like, your money is nice to have in their wallet, but like, they aren't doing it for you.
When you churn it out, that's when the quality really suffers.
Oh, yeah.
My father actually once told me about a conversation that he had with Roger Zelazny at Worldcon. Because he had really enjoyed Zelazny's early stuff, but found the later stuff kind of weak. And he's like, what happened? And Zelazny pointed at his kids who were asleep on a couch nearby, and it's like, I had a family. Like, I have to earn a living now.
Yeah.
And it's like, so he had to keep just putting stuff out, no matter what the quality was.
Well, yeah, life is not, I think that gets forgotten, is life is not static, It's, given Scud and the way it ends now, that 10-year hiatus was worth it. Yeah, there was a cliffhanger for 10 years, but you also have to think, you don't always get the luxury of a good, they brought Futurama back after 5 or 6 years, and it was not nearly that's
good. An issue of not necessarily being able to get all of the same team back.
Well, they did. It was Matt Groening who'd moved on to doing other things, and so he was involved, but his heart wasn't in it anymore.
Yeah.
And you get things that are really great that never get finished.
No, yeah.
And so the thing is
endings.
God, I don't want to talk about this because it'll
You're
make me sad.
It's going
to make me tear up. Well, because I always think of we talk about this. Me and Toby talk about this a lot. The Pirates of Darkwater, which had an amazing fucking run, and then just
you guys know the story of that, right? Does any of you guys heard? So they finished it and they filmed the last 3 episodes, and the show's done. It's in the can. They're ready to go, and the warehouse where they keep all the film burns down.
Oh yeah,
and instead
I did
of
hear that.
reshooting and voice acting and all of that, the studio was just like, fuck it, pull the plug. And so the show that does have an ending, because of a studio fire, we never got the ending.
Yeah, which makes it even worse. Or you get things like The Godfather 3, which, because they couldn't get Robert Duvall back, they had to completely change the story, and you don't get you don't get the artist's original vision. It's worth it to wait to get the artist's original vision.
That's something that's so cool, I think, about comic books over a lot of other mediums. And novels also have this luxury too, but when you're not working with actors and voice talent and that kind of stuff, you get to keep your characters and you get to keep a lot more of the creative vision around. Imagine if Scud was a television show and then they took a 10-year break and then they came back and all the actors were on doing it. It would be like Arrested Development, where it's it was so hard to get the ball rolling on that again that it took forever.
Well, they're going to do it with Titus. They're bringing Titus back.
The sitcom?
Yeah.
Wait, really?
Yeah, Christopher Titus has actually secured a deal with Fox to bring it back, and it's
I didn't know anybody watched that show.
the same shit that they were doing in the 90s. I don't know that I don't know that they're going to be able to have.
I am weirdly.
Titus wasn't in the 90s.
No, it was in the early 2000s.
Yeah, it was.
Was it?
I could be 2000s. Completely wrong about this, but didn't Stacy Keach die?
I don't know.
Did he?
No, he's on the 6th season of fucking 30 Rock.
Okay.
What happened to this country? God damn it! He does the couch commercials for when Jack.
Yeah.
That was great. Or he does the Bazooka Joe one in the end. It's like chewing a mountain that somebody froze and broke into pieces.
They're also doing it's not necessarily a continuation of the series, but it is in a way. They're doing Girl Meets World right now, which brings back all the original cast of Boy Meets World to do an entirely Mr. Feeney, who I totally thought was dead.
Oh,
it's still
mind
alive.
blown.
Well, yeah, it's the.
I watched way too much of that show.
Yeah, so Topanga and Corey are now parents of a little girl, and the show's about her. And so all the supporting cast is still there. And that's bizarre, but I'm kind of really excited for that.
I hope that Will Friedle does his Batman impression.
I feel like what ends up happening is that you have this thing that becomes kind of a cult phenomenon, as Scud kind of was.
Yeah.
And it's very, very hard after any length of time away to tap back into that energy and that feeling. And that Rob Schrab was able to come back and craft an ending in the last 4 issues that works, that feels organic. It doesn't feel like, oh no, this direction is wrong, I'm going to go in this direction. It totally flows.
Even reading it, it's like impressive. I forget which issue where the 10-year gap began and where it ends.
Like, it's amazing.
I have to think about it, and then I'm like, I think it was this one, and I'm
you can
wrong.
You can tell that there's a big jump up in the quality of the art after 10 years.
Yeah, well, the printing has changed, it seems like, because everything's like a lot sharper.
Although he actually has said that he made sure specifically to do everything the way that he did it back in the day. Like he was still drawing by hand, doing all the lettering. Like he didn't really switch up his process for the new stuff because he wanted to keep it consistent. Yeah. And you can tell that the printing is better.
Right.
But it's still the same art.
Yeah, no, and that's one of the things I really admire about the book, because it would have been so easy to just go I'm going to use Photoshop everything. Yeah, right?
And just
everything is so quick. And then there's just and it's in color, and there's glow effects on it, it would be...
Lens flare,
go! It would be...
It's in 3D,
it would be so easy to just, go the whole 9 on it, but I'm glad that he didn't. It shows an integrity to his work, and it's just the mark of a great creator that had a good vision, and I just think this book is super important in terms of comics, but it's also a fucking blast to read.
Oh, God, no, I love this book.
It's not foundational or a touchstone or any of those words I've used before to describe things like The Authority.
Right.
But I think it is an important work of the 90s, because it was important in the 90s. This is what people were really reading.
Yeah.
This is what people cared about, and this is what indie comics were like at the time.
And I just think that it shows a wealth of creativity that new creators and mainstream companies should really take note of and be like,
absolutely,
hey, stuff like this crazy wacky shit that we think nobody likes, it actually works, and here's a great example of when it worked. And that's what Scud can do for the industry. I think is prove that it's the audience isn't stupid. They can follow a weird story. They can get on board with an elephant man with fishing rod fingers, and Drywall, who's a fucking amazing character, and heartbreaking.
Awesome. Oh yeah,
that I always forget that backstory issue is coming, and then it just punches you in the fucking heart.
It does, but it's so redeemed by the last couple of pages.
Oh no, it's
of
great.
The last issue.
It's so good.
There is one thing that I wanted to talk about though that actually really bothered me about this read through, which is
go ahead.
Something first?
Go ahead. Okay, so I haven't done my initial reaction thing yet.
We just got excited. Sorry, Cade.
Yeah, no, and I was
talking about Titus.
I was kind of right there in the conversation too. So I feel like part of my problem with it, this was my first time reading it, and like Matt said, I probably detracted from the experience by reading it all in one sitting. However, I did fall asleep halfway through and then had to force myself back awake and reread it. But it was a fun ride, don't get me wrong. I really loved Drywall. I thought that a lot of the gunplay was very well drawn. It was a fun ride. I liked it, but I didn't really think it was anything special. And I'm not really sure why, but maybe it is what Matt said, and that I read it in one sitting. But
I think that stuff like this is hard to put yourself in the mindset of when this was fresh sometimes, because you'll go back and watch movies, or even when you read The Dark Knight Returns or Watchmen, you can be like, I don't understand why this blew everybody's mind, because stuff that's come afterwards has so heavily been influenced by it that it's hard to separate it from it. Deconstructionist comics have been written over and over and over again since Watchmen, but knowing what was happening at the same time really helps put it into perspective. It's why I always tell people to read Crisis on Infinite Earths before you read Dark Knight Returns or Watchmen, to just like contrast like
perspective.
What's the big mainstream thing that's going on versus what is this like insane dissection of that. And if I hadn't read this before this week, I think I would feel the same way as you do, Kay, because there's so much stuff that we've had that's come after this, like Venture Brothers or The Tick, or I mean, The Tick was coming out kind of at the same time, but like the animated show and the television show and like stuff like Futurama and all this stuff that feels similar to this in some way kind of makes this feel less original. I don't know.
I've made that a similar point to that before on other things. Like, it's hard to understand how mind-blowing something is after it's had a decade to influence so many things that came after it.
Yeah.
So I don't have this problem.
You were reading it when it came out, though.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't. This came out. This started coming out, and at a point when I was not. I was young. I mean, when Scud started coming out, was probably like 90.
It was 94.
It was 94. So in 94, I was reading Valiant, and I don't even think I was.
Your brother was an Image guy.
My brother was an Image guy, but Dark Horse was, the studio. This was like an indie. This was like a small indie book when it was coming out, and then I think Dark Horse
actually
did the trades.
Schraub talks about the origins of the book. This girl that he had been going out with for like a month broke up with him, and he was so heartbroken that he invented a comic book company to publish this comic book so that he could give it to her, and she would get back together.
And she would be.
It's similar to the Tick was published by like New England Capital, whatever, which was a fake comic book company that the owner of the comic book store that Ben Edlund worked at like created to help Ben Edlund get press.
Yeah, and
because the 90s were a crazy time for publishing comics.
It really was, and so I was aware of these things. I was aware of Scud in like my periphery, but. Most of my series, like I didn't get when I read comics originally. I read them for enjoyment. It wasn't until I was older and I moved up to
now
Washington,
you read them for hate,
where I read them to hate them. Where I had learned how to read more deliberately, and I read more into things, and I came to appreciate books. I mean, the books that I was reading were much more like A Crisis than they were like books they are today. You know, there were still books using narration, and I was not like, I think thought bubbles today are like, what the hell's going on here? This is really weird. And when it's
cool to see them used again.
Yeah,
they are starting to come back.
I like
recently.
It.
Well, they're used not exactly ironically, but like because nobody uses them anymore, people can use them for effect.
Yeah, they're novel now.
And so I think there's certain people that can read literature that came out hundreds of years before they were born, and because they're familiar with it, they can understand the impact that it had on the culture at the time.
Well, I think it helps having the reference to what was going on in the culture is important. It's why I hate Jane Eyre, is because
we're not even going to talk about it. I never want to talk about that book again.
You know, it's like the culture at the time was having so many problems with poverty and just like starvation, and here's a book about, I hope he loves me. Fuck that.
Well, but
I'm so disappointed by it.
I mean, the thing is that we're not going to have this fucking conversation right now is the thing, because God damn it, I actually have a response to that.
But the cultural impact of stuff is important.
Yeah,
and it's hard to get that kind of...
Going back and reading, our friend Frank, who we were speaking about earlier, he went out and bought the absolute Crisis on Infinite Earths, and he's like, I can't read it. It's just written in this very stilted way. And I'm like, because that's the way people were writing comics in 1988, you know?
86.
86. You need to be able to kind of like put that shit aside and really, and really like understand what was going on.
It's hard to find enjoyment in that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I remember reading it, and like I just remember thinking
I made you read it.
Yeah, I just remember thinking this is god awful, but at the same time thinking like, I mean, if you distill it down, what's actually happening is insane. Like it's fucking. I mean, it's literally world changing.
And I fucking defy you to tell me that you did not get goosebumps at the end when he's got fucking Supergirl in his arms and he's just like, and Superman is just in anguish.
Yeah, I mean, the things that are happening are just it's just insane, and nothing like that has happened in comics since. I mean, the fact that they did that, I think, gets lost in the book itself, being as dated as it is now. But I mean, I remember just thinking about what would a comic be like now if they actually did this stuff, but on a modern level.
Right, and it would be much harder to do.
It would be harder to do. I mean,
but they're so much more protective of their characters.
Well, because they're not characters anymore; they're properties.
Yeah, I mean, they were properties in the '80s, but they
it's
are
actually
worth more now.
It's been a little bit interesting to follow Ultimate Marvel recently, because at a certain point it seemed like they basically decided, like, this is the universe where we can do whatever the fuck we want to these characters. So like Reed Richards is a supervillain, and Spider-Man is dead, and like all this crazy bullshit has happened. Yeah, it's like, well, let's kill this character, because why the fuck not? We'll just make a new one. And it's not like they're going to stop existing in the 616.
It's their sandbox where they get to just play around. And this is where I think that Cade brought up earlier that the New 52 reboot would have been really interesting if the original universe hadn't been destroyed. Like if they had treated it like it was their ultimate universe or something. And I think that would have been more interesting, because I would be more forgiving of like the Batgirl story if there was still my Batgirl was still around. If my Flash was still around, then I would be more forgiving of this other Flash.
Well, Superman's actions in the New 52 are fucking retarded right now, but if you have them as a comparison to your normal Superman continuity is just kind of being Superman, then it becomes much more interesting.
Well, you can, I mean, I feel like you can be a little bit more forgiving when you've still got the characters, but what they did in Crisis in '85 was just like they changed the game. I don't think that they sort of did it with the New 52 reboot, but they didn't do it with as much.
They changed it back to a game that they had been playing previously.
Crisis was this huge step forward. New 52 was this huge step back to 1994, where everybody was angsty and everybody, it was like...
But I still did want to make a point...
the shiny vampire, he doesn't love me. Wait. Sorry, wrong conversation.
There is a point that I still wanted to make about Scud, because I do have one major complaint about it. Is rereading it, I really feel like Sussudio is just blatantly fridged. Like, he just fucking kills her.
Except that she's just to give the whole fucking ending.
She's what?
She's totally not.
How is she not?
Because she's there with him in the end.
Yeah, after he brings her back from the dead. Like, that doesn't change the fact that she is killed. Like, she's just brutally murdered for no other reason than to give Scud motivation.
So, and
how is that not
different from the fucking God Killer's family Hal?
Is this...
Which is a much more egregious case, because those people aren't even given any fucking backstory.
I think it's more egregious because she's given a backstory.
And you have me reading the current Deadpool, in which the first fucking few issues, Agent Preston is fucking killed just so that she can walk around in Deadpool's head, which is fucking...
But that's the thing, is that she's not really dead. She's still around as a character.
Is fucking Sussudio, because
she disappears from the comic entirely. She does not exist as a character during the time that she's dead, and she only comes back at the very end as a reward for Scud.
Wait, her image is in his head though throughout the time that she's dead. She pops up in some of the panels of like, this is the reason I'm doing this.
That's him thinking about her.
That's what I mean. Is she's still there even though she's...
Right, but she's not a character.
Fair.
She's an image.
I think that...
Like, she is reduced to an object which motivates Scud.
Well, I think that I agree, and I also disagree, because, like, she is fridged. She is killed to motivate Scud, but one thing that I find, the underlying dialogue that runs through the entire Scud book to me is, what is mortality? Like, why would you want to stay alive? Like, what are the purposes for being alive? And the Scud robots in the background are all taken out of commission, and that's not really revealed in the story a lot, but what I think is, and I'm, kind of gleaning this information, is like, because Scud chose not to let himself die, he chose not to complete his mission, it was a flaw, in the programming, essentially, because there are still other robots that explode on commission, which one of my favorite scenes in the whole book is when she buys the robot from the vending machine, and she's like, kill all the zombies, and he's like, wait, aren't they already dead? And then just blows up because it's a shitty robot. Like, I think that the whole death and mortality and when do you want to stay alive and when do you want to die, because as soon as she dies, Scud starts questioning why is he still alive? He has suicidal thoughts,
and I'm not saying that it's a bad story.
No,
I'm just saying that this is a Phrygian moment.
It is
detracted from it for me,
but
I still like Scud.
I think it's a good comic. Phrygian isn't always bad though.
Yeah,
we always use Phrygian as a negative thing,
and that's the thing, because I've been thinking about this, and that the problem with this sort of inherent sexism is that any one incident isn't that bad. The first black guy who likes fried chicken and watermelon isn't bad. It's when every black guy likes fried chicken and watermelon that you have racism.
Well, sure.
And the sexism is the same. It's like, yes, I can defend it in this instance because of this and this and this. Like, this isn't so bad. It's when you look at it in the aggregate that it becomes problematic.
But I also feel
I think that a character's death has always been used as motivation for other characters. I think that's true. That happens, and I think that like the quote that Cade was talking about earlier, where Morph dies in the original animated series of X-Men. That's totally to motivate Wolverine to be like not a shitty X-Men anymore.
The thing about Phrygian is it's a problem because it's women, and women are treated shabbily in comics. However, Sussudio has an arc in this book. She has agency. She has fucking backstory. You know who she is.
She's also one of two characters that Scud cares about.
Exactly.
The other being Drywall.
And so... Yes,
what's the robot rabbit?
That it does give Scud motivation, but that is not the only reason she's killed. She's not Alexandra. Yeah. She's not fucking.
And that's the thing. Like, her death doesn't come out of anything that she did or anything to do with her character. Her death is entirely about Scud.
Well, I just think. What I want to say about this,
she didn't have to help him though. Like, she is in the story because of her own personal motivation. Like, she doesn't fall in love with Scud, and that's what gets her introduced to the story. She works for Voodoo Ben Franklin, making voodoo dolls of Scud.
By the way, Voodoo Ben, fucking love him.
Yeah. I hate Ben Franklin, so I love it when he's a villain in anything. So it makes me really happy. But she's a part of the story because she's a villain at first, and she happens to have the weird fetish of falling in love with robot men.
She's a robosexual, which I think is hilarious.
Well, it's like, okay, what if Ra's al Ghul showed up and shot Catwoman in the head and was like, "Hey, Batman, how much do you hate me now?"
So this is where I'm going to take this conversation now. I'm not going to argue with you about this because I had exactly, and I didn't talk about this on the podcast, but in the Thor, the God Slayer, or God Butcher, whatever, I cannot remember his name right now. The God Butcher himself. Gore. His mother is introduced, and within a page, she's killed. His wife, unborn child, killed. To me, that was an egregious instance of Phrygian. And when I told Toby this, he said, I can't argue with you, but I don't feel it's as egregious as others. And I use that same argument to you.
That's fine. You're welcome to have your own perspective.
I think that trope, that character trope of like, these characters have died, and now this will motivate the main character, is a fine trope. I feel like the problem is it's 90% of the time it's a woman.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's sad, but like, in instances in which there's equal treatment given, like Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen both die, to motivate Luke to go become a Jedi, fine. Like that, and that's okay.
If Aunt Beru had been the one to die and Uncle Owen survived, like that would have been problematic.
And I think I see the problem there. I see the issue, and I understand why Phrygian is like. It's a bad trope because it's lazy most of the time. In this work, I feel like there isn't really another option. The only other option is kill Drywall. And Drywall's story has a different ending. Like, it has a different arc than that.
Right, but part of the problem is that Drywall has this other thing going on where Sussudio doesn't.
Well, she has...
Like, and I'm not saying that
Right.
it has to be like a certain way. Like, it bothers me, but
Yeah.
I find problems in everything.
Yeah,
obviously.
I was going to say, I mean...
I don't think there's a thing that we've read that I've unambiguously said, this is perfect.
One of the things...
attractors.
No, you have problems with that.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like now we're getting into this point where we're arguing. I mean, at what point does fully fleshing out every single character's
Right.
stories and motivations detract from the larger piece?
Well, I
Right,
think...
and that's what I'm saying. Like, not
and so
everything doesn't have to be perfect.
yeah, and there's no way that we're gonna.
But this
gonna
is
satisfy
one thing that I
everyone.
noticed that I didn't like.
Well,
about
I think
this
that the more you point out instances of fridging in a work, the more it's able to be... the more you recognize the trope as lazy. And Feminist
Except
Frequency...
I have a counterpoint to that.
Sure.
Wow, I just froze up. Okay, so one of the reasons that it's done so often is because we have this idea in our minds that when that happens, we have more understanding of the character, and it's something that we can easily identify.
Well, sure.
And then think, okay, well, so now
that's why tropes
And
exist.
we're getting
And that's why tropes exist, and that's why like the saving the damsel in distress is happens in almost every video game. Like that is such a huge thing.
It's an
because
easy
it's
shortcut.
easy.
Yeah.
It's lazy.
And
that's my argument.
It is lazy, but at the same time, I feel that it does help you understand the character.
Well,
No, I agree.
that's why.
Like,
that's why tropes become tropes. Because
I think that's what I was talking about earlier with like Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen is like it has sometimes that has to happen. Sometimes characters have to die to motivate other characters forward.
Yeah, and
it doesn't always have to be women though. Like, would it have not worked better that a dog got killed? Like, equally sad, probably more sad.
And that's the
actually.
thing. Like, characters are going to die to motivate other characters, and sometimes it's going to be women.
And I think that the reason that happens is because the majority of characters are male. And, like, that's just an inherent problem in the system. If it was a fair, equal 50% of characters are female, half of that trope would be the male dying so the female character can be projected forward. Like, it doesn't... the reason that this exists is because of obvious problems within the sexist narrative. And that we, like... that media is still in its infancy as far as, like, equally representing gender roles and...
but there's also
all races.
I think what happens is this: you have the building blocks of writing. You have these tropes, right? And the reason that it's so that fridging is such a bad one is because it perpetuates this idea that a woman can only that the only way you could further a man's arc is by hurting the soft person, right? Because these women don't. They're. It's like, oh, you want to make Elastic Man more interesting? Well, let's have Sue Dibney be raped or murdered, right? Because that'll make his arc a lot more interesting. And because there are a lot of male characters, it becomes easy. It's like, oh, we're going to throw somebody under the bus. Well, we'll just do the woman because that would make anybody mad, right? And it's like,
the only thing I'm saying though is that it gives the reader something tangible to realize and understand about the character without lengthy dialogue.
Well, I know. Again, I 100% agree.
I agree with
lazy
you.
writing.
I think it's that kills it for me. Like if you don't give a shit enough to put that dialogue in there, then you shouldn't be doing it. Like, that's it. Like throwing Alex in the fridge, that was a fucking lazy way to do that.
Yeah.
And it's because they wanted to get Kyle right into the action. They needed to give him... They gave him this girlfriend, and he's connected to Earth, and they needed to get him off Earth.
And if it had only happened...
Why not just write him without the girlfriend?
Well, if it had happened only one time, would it be such an egregious error?
Well, that's the thing.
Because it happens
all the time.
Always. And there have been a lot of books on the show. We talk about it.
Not all the times it's a bad thing. Sometimes...
No, I'm saying it's not inherently bad at all, except that it happens all of the time.
Right. And that's the thing. One incident isn't bad.
Right.
It's when it's every incident.
Right.
When it's women 90% of the time and men 10% of the time.
Okay,
that's a problem.
and I do agree with that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like Scud would be a much better work if this didn't happen. I'm saying it's something that we need to talk about.
I agree.
And needs to happen less.
It should be mentioned because every time you mention it, and if we mention it on every book that it's happened in, which is a lot of books that we've read. Well, no, it's just you notice the pattern. You notice why it's such a destructive trope is because it happens all the time. If every superhero's origin story was people from an alien world launched their dying baby to a planet, you would get tired of it after a while. You would be fucking sick of it, and that's where I am now is because it's just lazy. It's just
absolutely.
You're not trying
but
when
it's
you write a story like that.
it's lazy and it's harmful, which is like this double whammy thing. And
it's harmful because it's so prevalent.
Yeah, and so I think the thing is that it's just the reason we talk about it, and the reason it needs to be brought up, because no matter what you think about it, it's acknowledging it is the way you get rid of that shit.
Well, yeah, I wanted to bring up this earlier. Was Feminist Frequency is a channel on YouTube that I watch a lot, and
absolutely,
Nita Sarkeesian is really good.
Although I sometimes disagree with a lot of the points on there, like one thing that is so important to watch those videos for is the amount of examples of the trope they're talking about.
Absolutely.
The whole first video of the damsel in distress is just like hundreds and hundreds of examples of the damsel in distress. And my argument has always been like, I don't really need a damsel in distress. Like, I'm going to finish a Mario game because I want to get to the fucking end. Like, it has nothing to do with whether the princess is kidnapped or not. Like, it is a lazy trope, and it's also not helpful.
Well, I could get into such a long conversation about character goals versus player goals,
and then
does not belong on this podcast.
And we should have that at a different time because it's super interesting. And they just did a recent one that was the
the Miss Male character.
Miss Male character, which
in
is
comics
something
we usually call a distaff character.
Right. Joe's talked about that a lot with like the why does there need to be a Batwoman? Why can't she be her own interesting character? And that video also is just full of examples that I had forgotten or would never think of. And I think that it is worthy to talk about it, if just to put a tally mark in the tally of here's another one, here's another instance of somebody getting fridged, and those tallies add up, and then writers go, maybe we shouldn't use that trope anymore. I think that's why it's important.
And I think there's a visceral reaction upon hearing it, especially when somebody, like the first time I heard this term, somebody talked about the Killing Joke, and I'm like, no, it's there. All right, Byron Gordon is fridged. That doesn't mean that you can't enjoy it. All right. Everybody likes problematic material.
It's easy to assume that when somebody is criticizing something that you like, they're criticizing you. Well, and that's not the case.
Also, again, like I'm talking about Feminist Frequency, but something that they say at the beginning of every video, which I really respect, is it's possible to critique some aspects of a work while still loving the work in total. Like that, and I think that that's valid because I criticize video games constantly, to the fact that nobody wants to talk to me about video games anymore. But that doesn't mean that I don't love video games. Like I just have a lot of negative shit to say about them.
I want to make it perfectly clear that what I took exception with was not Toby. Was not Toby saying that Sussudio was fridged, but that lessened the work in his eyes and it was because we had this conversation about Thor.
If I'm grading a work, it's like 2 points off for inherent sexism.
Right. Well, it fails the Bechdel test.
But then the thing is,
it's still a good comic. I still liked it. It just had this negative aspect to it.
We had the exact same conversation before we were talking about Thor, and I said almost the exact same thing to him. It really annoyed me that Gore's
and I recognize
family is killed, and he did recognize it, but he did it.
I wanted to argue against it, and I couldn't.
You were
right.
He did it in this very smug and beardy way. He makes it sound like he was very magnanimous about it, but no. I could hear the clicking of his keyboard, and I knew.
I was grinding my teeth when I said it.
I just want to state for the record that most of the time I feel that Phrygian is bad, but I feel that when it's well done, like it was in this book, I do not think it detracted.
Well, and again, it's like it's not an inherently bad thing because sometimes characters have to die. Like not all characters can live forever.
There are ways that you can do that where it's not necessarily bad. If Sussudio had sacrificed herself heroically to save Scud, that would have been fun.
I also have a problem with the Messiah trope, but
that would actually have made it worse for me.
I think that
I'm throwing an example.
Yeah, no, I agree that there's probably a way it could have been done better, and I think that only in like recognizing that tropes exist in media does it help future writers write differently. Because if the trope is something that's talked about a lot, then people are like, well, I don't want to write those type of characters because I want to do something different. Totally. That's the plight of all artists, all creative people, is to separate yourself from the work that's come before it, but learn from it in some way.
I want to throw out one more example real quick, and then I think we should go to recommendations.
Sounds good.
I don't remember exactly how it goes down, so Joe, remind me. In Crisis on Infinite Earths, when Supergirl dies, she dies because she's saving the universe. And that is not a Phrygian moment in my eyes because she's specifically doing something. Yes, it gives motivation to Superman, who is emotionally distraught at her death, but she died as a hero. She wasn't just killed off.
The same thing happens like 2 issues earlier, spoilers, for a point from 25 years ago or something. But
almost 30.
Yeah, the same thing happens a few issues earlier to Barry Allen. So there are superheroes. What's not happening is a female love interest of a character is dying to further their boyfriend's story, but superheroes are dying. There are things at stake in that universe, and one of the reasons why they killed Supergirl wasn't because she was a woman; it was because they were trying to thin out the Superman family.
And to be specific, to put somebody in the fridge, to put a woman in the fridge, that is specifically when a female character is killed for no other reason than to further the arc of a male character.
Right.
And I believe that you can put this on a scale from 1 to 10. 10 being where the female character is introduced only because she will serve that purpose.
But the point that I wanted to make
was
in
Star Wars.
Yeah, and 1 where other things happen, like...
The point I wanted to make is that not every death of a female character is necessarily a Phrygian or problematic.
No.
Right. Well, characters have to die. That's just... They can't all live forever. They can't.
I'm going to kill everybody except Matt in this room once we're done. And Cade. I won't kill Cade either.
They have...
Or Chard. I won't kill Chard.
At times, characters have to die. And so, like, there are problematic ways in which to do that, in which they don't... It doesn't mean as much, and there are ways to kill characters that... make things meaningful.
More. And that's really what I want.
Look at Serenity. If you want to just cry your eyes out, watch all Firefly and Serenity. And
Serenity didn't happen. Never happened. Didn't exist.
And I
refuse to believe.
Before we move on to recommendations, I want to say this. What I love about Scud is you can clear away all the talk about like what he was doing and what was going on. I love this book on a very visceral level because it's fun.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious and it's weird, uncompromisingly so. And you can pick it up and read it, and you can there's really an emotional connection there. It's not...
I agree with you on all points.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's got a lot of heart.
The art,
what it is.
And I think that's
the art
the best
is
way to
so
put it.
phenomenal in its unpolished, like, unrefined nature. Like, I find it so fluid and so animatorly and very... like the action works
and
so
surprisingly
well.
detailed
and
at points.
Actually, as I was reading this, I was wishing that they had made a Saturday morning cartoon of it in the 90s with Scud voiced by Billy West.
Oh my god! I mean, we got the Tick cartoon, so that's good. But that would have been Scud would have been
pretty amazing.
Oh god, I didn't want to think about it.
Well, it was optioned for a movie in the 90s.
Well, that would have been awful.
Was it really?
It actually reminded me of a cartoon that really existed called Project Geeker. That was voiced by Billy West and also had Cree Summer in it.
I don't remember that one at all.
It was very short-lived and it was pretty weird.
Yeah, it was pretty out there. This movie was optioned by Oliver Stone's film company in the late 90s, I want to say, like 97.
Weird.
Or something like that.
Right before Oliver Stone started, like, nose-diving up his own ass.
Who knows when
I think that's the thing.
I will not argue with you.
Did you see Alexander? I'm just saying.
Let's move on to recommendations.
Okay, so I have a pretty good segue here into my book because we were just talking about superheroes needing to die and Crisis on Infinite Earths, and my book is actually from a time before I quit reading comics, and this is part of the Countdown to Infinite Crisis series, which I was getting all of them as single issues, and they were bad. But this was the only trade that I actually bought from the Countdown series because I thought that it was great. And that is the OMAC Project by Greg Rucka. And it has a lot to do with what was going on at the time in DC, but part of me remembers that it stood on its own as well. And so I was looking through my books and I was like, I kind of want to reread this and see if that's still the case, if I can look at it from 2020 and see, does it stand up by itself? And so I just wanted to throw that out there and recommend it. It's about Checkmate Spy Division taking control of Batman's Brother One.
And OMAC stands for, originally stood for One Man Army Corps.
Yeah, this was a title from like the 70s or something like that.
I thought it was maybe late 60s, early 70s.
Something.
It's around that time.
Or you could look at it as a failed attempt at a book in the New 52. That was horrible.
Yeah.
I was actually tempted to buy that the other day when I was at the comic shop right down the street from where we are.
OMAC was one of the original New 52, right?
Yep. Wasn't that was written by Didio, wasn't it?
It was.
Oh, God. Was it in crayon? That's what I want to know.
No, it said plotted by Dan Didio, written by somebody else.
Oh, my bad. I don't know Didio's name on it.
Didio just gets drunk.
Plotted.
Just gets
Make
drunk.
things happen to people.
When I hear
make
plotted
people
on a book,
mad.
Make people go boom boom.
when I hear plotted on a book, it just makes me feel like how I would plot a book, which is just get drunk and call somebody and be like, I got an idea. Hang on, make this. Hang on. This is gonna work. So Superman and Batman fight Spider-Man, and we'll make it happen. I'm going to bed.
That's right.
Like that's how I would plot
Wolverine
it.
pops his claw, Spider-Man swings around a little bit, stuff happens, and we're done.
Bang bang action. We're done. Make it happen.
When I hear that, especially when I hear plotted by, and then I hear the name Dan Didio, it makes me just feel like he just shit all over it. It was like, you make something from this.
It also makes me think of this TV show, this British TV show that nobody's ever heard about called Garth Marenghi's Dark Place.
What?
Yeah, no one's heard about it. But the end of the theme, the Garth Marenghi is this fake character that they made up that's like a Stephen King parody who they're like making fun of. He's like visionary, dream weaver. And it's like, anyway, the end of the opening theme credit is theme tune based on songs whistled by Garth Marenghi. So it just like kills me every time I see that. I think it's the funniest shit I've ever seen. All right, I'll go next, I guess. I also sort of brought a superhero book, but it's bizarre, and when I was reading Scud, it was reminding me of this because I've been meaning to go back and read this a lot recently. It's The Umbrella Academy, and I brought both trades because that's all there is. There's just 12 issues. Gerard Way... it's written by Gerard Way of My Chemical Romance and illustrated by Gabriel Ba, who is the brother of Fabio Moon, I believe.
I'm not sure.
Fabian? I don't know what is... Gabriel Ba illustrates this one. And it's phenomenal artwork. It's colored by Dave Sims, I believe. Dave Stewart. And it's like... Gerard Way was the lead singer, I think, of My Chemical Romance. I don't really know anything about Gerard Way. So people tend to like not be really interested in this work because it's like, oh, this rock star is going to go write comics. But Gerard Way was an intern at DC in the early 2000s, and then 9/11 happened, and he was like, well, I always wanted to be a comic book creator. That was my dream. But I also had this other dream to go be a musician, and so I'm going to go pursue that for a while. Got really famous. But one of his other dreams has always been to write comics. He's back writing comics now that My Chemical Romance is broken up. And I was hoping that he was going to continue Umbrella Academy, but it's a new series I haven't read yet, but my friend Mariah says is really good.
It's pretty decent.
So I'm going to check it out. But this book is about these kids. I think there are 7 kids that are all adopted by this like rich philanthropist guy, and they all have superpowers, and they all team up to save the world. And something happens, and you don't really know what, and 10 years later they've disbanded and are all kind of living their own lives, and something else happens, and they have to get back together, form a team again. and save the world from stuff. And it's very crazy. There's like talking monkeys and a guy with a gorilla body who lives on the moon. And the
pretty standard for comic books.
pretty standard comic book stuff. The second trade involves a lot of time traveling assassins and JFK conspiracies and just superpowers.
Which is all handled surprisingly well.
And and actually, if the name Gerard Way turns you off from this book, it shouldn't, because the writing is actually pretty solid. Like, as a freshman effort, I think it's really good. And I love the art in this book. I think the colors are really bold, and if you have never seen Gabriel Ba's work, this is just a great example of it. I'm a huge fan of this stuff. So it's just really fun, and I think that people should read it. If you liked Scud and kind of the wackiness that comes about from that, this was definitely influenced by that kind of stuff, like Tick and Scud and more wacky craziness, superhero, quote-unquote, type action. And I think it's worth a read. So check it out, guys. I think it came out in like 2006 through 2008, like roughly in that era.
The art reminds me kind of Hellboy a little bit.
Yeah.
Just in the like in the shading.
I was just saying,
I think that that really like polygonal shading that they use in Hellboy, and also in Venture Brothers for like the blood smears on people are always like very like jagged. Yeah, like it reminds me of that, because all the highlights are very like squares rather than like soft edged highlight circles or whatever.
Cool. What did you bring, Joe?
Well, considering we've had kind of a revival here at View from the Gutters, we got Kingdom Come, which had been recommended before, and Scud, which had been recommended before. So I thought I'd bring something else that I recommended before, which was Stumptown, by Greg Rucka and Matthew Southworth.
Oh, two Rucka books.
Yeah. Well, I mean, except I prefer this a lot more than I prefer OMAC. I tried to read OMAC, and I was just like,
I was laughing while Cade was pitching this, not because the book is bad, but because I was looking at Matt and remembering the time that I handed him a stack of 20 books. And I was like, you need to read all of this before you can read Infinite Crisis.
Yeah, no, that wasn't actually what it was. Is I was like, you know what, I haven't read 52 yet. And I was like, what should I read before I read 52, Chard? And he's like, well, you should start at Crisis on Infinite Earths, and here's 15 books to lead up to that, which it started out with OMAC Project, and I think went to like Days of Vengeance,
and
OMAC was the first of the countdown.
I don't even remember. I just remember
Sacrifice.
Yeah, Sacrifice and
Villains
United, Secret Six.
So, what is Stumptown about?
Stumptown is about. I was going to make a joke, but I'm not going to. Stumptown is what I would call a noir, a mystery noir story set in Oregon, in Portland, Oregon, specifically. And it's about this female detective, very much in the vein of Marlowe, and she's tracking down. I think she's tracking down. I can't remember if it's the daughter or the granddaughter of the casino owner in the native casino owner in the area.
I believe it's the granddaughter.
Did this come out before or after Whiteout?
After. Yeah, this is
Uh,
still within the last probably 3 years.
This came out, I want to say either last year or the year before, and the sequel just came out last year. So this came out 2 years ago, and the sequel just came out last year. And it's good that you bring up Whiteout, because I think if you read Whiteout and you read this is a much more polished story. It's colored. Matthew Southworth's art is stunning. I think the pacing is a lot better.
I think if you like Whiteout, that you will enjoy this.
Yeah,
as well.
and I think you'll like it a lot more. I think it's definitely one of my favorite Rucka books.
Also a beautiful hardcover.
Oh God, yes. Although unlike the what's the hardcover press that we're always talking about, they did Archaea, which is beautiful and relatively inexpensive
for what you get.
Oni put this out and you pay for it. But it's worth it. I mean, it's
Oni's local to us in the Northwest.
Yeah.
So it's why Greg
I don't know, it's not too bad off of what most hardcovers are. This one's only 30.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? Okay, I thought it was 30.
I mean, if it had been 40 or 50, that would.
Maybe I just thought it was more expensive because I bought it at Emerald City Comic Con last year, and I was paying like $5 or $6 for trades because you just go and there's like people dropping stock left and right.
But yeah, Oni, they do a great job with publishing stuff. They're local to the Northwest, so I think that's why Greg Arca, who lives in the Northwest, tends to
he lives in Portland.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he's totally a Portland.
Pretty sure Dark Horse is in Portland.
Dark Horse
they used to be. I don't. Are they still?
I don't know about Oni.
I don't know. Yeah, Oni is somewhere nearby though.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good. This is like crime fiction, detective fiction type stuff that Joe and I talk about and like a lot. So
yeah, Oni is also in Portland.
Yeah,
that's what I thought.
So I mean, this is solid writing, and it's a little bit outside of where we've been lately. So I kind of thought I'd pitch it, but yeah, I think it's really good.
Also, the second story, incredibly strong. If you read the first one and like it,
I actually haven't picked up the second one, but I'm going to because Rucka and Southworth will be at Emerald City Comic Con again this year, and I'm going
as will we.
Yes, hopefully. We will. And no, I'm going to be there. I don't care.
Yeah, I know.
And I will get it signed again, and then I'm going to have the first because I'm. Yeah.
You got to get all those books signed.
I do. Every year I buy something from Richard Starkings, except the year he wasn't there 2 years ago, and I get it signed from him. So I have like one Elephant Men 1 through 5 signed.
That guy is so interesting.
He really is. He really is.
He's been doing comics for like 150
1,000 years. Yeah, right. Forever.
He knows everything about comic books.
But all right,
Matt, what you got?
I'll send it over to Matt for his recommendation.
And back to you in the studio.
And here's sports with Scott Scotsman.
So I brought an image book, The Last Christmas. I figure it's getting to be that time of year, so why not be festive? Also, they just reprinted this in a nice hardcover from Image that actually came out on the 20th of November. So it is created and written by Jerry Duggan and Brian Posehn, who are they still doing?
They're still doing Deadpool
right now.
If you haven't been reading it because you heard it wasn't great when it first started, with the last issue that came out as of the time we're recording this, which is 19, it has gotten incredibly good.
Yeah, and that's what
I highly recommend checking it out.
That's what I've heard from a lot of people because I read the first few issues of the first story and wasn't impressed.
It didn't floor me. It didn't floor. I mean, I thought it was okay.
Yeah, I've heard it's been getting so much better, and it's like nothing but good things about it recently.
Yeah, well, the last 5-issue arc makes everything getting up to that
the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yeah, is the arc that I just started, and that's the 5. That's the 5.
Yeah, it's like issues like 15 through 19.
I think, that sounds about right. And that's good. And also, I will say that issues 13 and 14 with the Heroes for Hire and the whole 70 thing and the white man, that was pretty hilarious.
But in any case, this Christmas.
And the pencils are by Rick Remender. This is actually the last book that he drew before going completely just to writing, and he does an amazing job
before leaving Earth.
So it's basically a post-apocalyptic story where, if you read some of the back matter in the book, Brian Posehn and Jerry Duggan were playing Halo, and they were talking about funny stories. And they're like, "Oh, what would happen if Santa met the Road Warrior?" And that's what made them stop playing Halo and start writing this, was that concept alone, because I couldn't stop laughing about it. So basically, post-apocalyptic, these people break into the North Pole, and shit goes down. No one believes about Santa anymore, except for like one kid, and there's all these like weird like mutants, and Santa decides to go out and try to find the one last kid that believes in Santa, and ends up just doing some major damage. It's a lot of fun. It's really ridiculous. The art's great, and I just kind of thought it would be fun. 1, because it was just reprinted. 2, it's kind of out of the realm of the things that we've been reading lately. It's
Christmas time.
It's in 3. Yeah, it's just that time of year.
I guess it is. We're within
by the time this drops.
Yeah, it will be.
Actually, that's true. That's true.
So
we're in the future.
That's right.
Future past.
Cool.
So yeah, check it out.
Toby, what do you want to read?
Well, so we got this week a really awesome fan letter from Mark, who said some very kind things about everybody. So thanks for writing in, Mark.
Shout out to Mark.
Yeah.
And he actually recommended a book to us, which I've started to read, and I've been enjoying it thus far, so I'm going to pitch it.
Awesome.
And because I haven't finished it, I'm actually going to read Mark's synopsis of it, and then kind of my thoughts. So this was released by Dark Horse in the early 90s. It's by Sarah Bayham and illustrated by Tim Sale. And the title is Billi 99. Billi 99 is a collection of a 4-issue miniseries from the early 90s. It's a different take on a near future inspired by Sarah Bayham's experiences with a rapidly decaying Detroit of the 1980s. Billi Chatham, the heiress of a megacorporation, is framed for her father's murder and becomes the vigilante, the Sword of Toledo, roaming the streets of the poverty-stricken part of the city called the Cordon. A series of rapes/murders, as well as the increasingly unstable condition at her father's former corporation and its workers' union, draws her back into the world of her father's murder mystery and corporate espionage to put an end to the chaos and clear her name. And it's interesting. It's definitely of the early 90s, kind of in the way that Scud is of the 90s. Mm-hmm. It's kind of shades of Batman, because, I mean, spoilers for the first issue, her father is basically Batman. Like, he has a mega corporation, but he has the secret identity, and he goes fights crime in the streets, and he's killed in this mysterious way, and she's blamed for his murder. And so she's kind of living in the Cordon when the series starts and trying to figure out how to be Batman herself.
That's cool.
But it's more of a gritty, realistic, real world story. There's all this intrigue with the corporation, and it's not wacky comic book corporate intrigue. It's people don't get paid enough money, and so they live in shitty houses. A lot of stuff that's going on today with the recession and all that, and kind of the abuses that people put upon, the very wealthy and corporations and stuff, saying they're abusing us, they're trying to create a wage slave culture and destroy the middle class and all that stuff. And this kind of plugs into a lot of that, even though it's from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's really good so far. Tim Sale's art is great, of course. And I'm liking it so far. I've read the first issue, basically.
Cool. And this was Dark Horse?
Yeah, I think it was originally published by Dark Horse.
The funny thing about this is I actually took some books into one of our used bookstores here in Olympia, and I was going to, I said, will you give me any money for these? And they were like, no, but we'll give you some money in trade. And I was like, that'll work. And I went and looked at the small comic section they have, and that was on the shelf, and I almost bought it, but then I couldn't make up my mind and I had to leave. And when I came back, it was gone.
Disappointed.
So I just think that's really interesting because I'm glad my instincts were correct, that it was something worth getting.
So thanks for the recommendation, Mark.
Yeah, thank you.
If anybody else has recommendations, please send them in to us.
Yeah.
Or if you want to tell us how awesome we are or how much we suck, and we actually we want you to tell us how much we suck, because then we can argue with you, and that's what we really
direct
want.
Those to Joe.
Let's do it.
Please tell us how much Joe sucks.
Taking on all comers. All right. Tell me, because I enjoy it.
Okay. Cade, what do you want to read?
Well, I want to read Billi 99, and I wanted to say thank you to Mark for the kind words, and I will absolutely keep recommending sappy superhero books.
And I will keep making apoplectic sounds of rage at Toby's inane suggestions that everything is not as I choose to view it.
Whoever wants to go next.
I'll go next. I'm going to vote for the Umbrella Academy.
All right.
I'm going to go Billi 99. That sounds interesting.
I am also going to vote for Umbrella Academy. So we're reading.
Hate you guys.
We're reading.
You always make me break the tie, and because I can't vote for my own book. That was me being cranky. Yeah, Billi 99. I actually really want
to.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was both me being the penguin and cranky.
Cranky penguin.
I actually have not read this book, which is surprising because I love Tim Sale.
I do as well.
I have heard of it. I think I remember it vaguely being like, "Oh, there's a Tim Sale book I haven't read," but that was about as far as I got. So, yeah, Billi 99. We will read that for next time.
Thank you, Mark, for the recommendation.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
And we'll see you guys on the next episode next week.
Well, you'll hear us.
No, we're gonna see you. We've been over this 1,000 times before. I'm watching them.
Yes.
I'm watching them.
We are omnipresent.
We're watching you.
We're right behind you right now.
Right.
Brother One is watching. Wait, we didn't pick my book.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.